Witchfinder General wasn't just another British horror classic. It was a war zone. A 25-year-old director fighting a Hollywood legend. Studio slashing scenes they called too brutal for audiences. And an ending so bleak, so violent, the censors went into full panic mode. What you saw in theaters in 1968, that was the compromise, the watered-down version, because behind the fog and the screaming, there's footage locked away that was never meant to survive. These are 12 creepiest facts about Witchfinder General, and hidden in them is the shocking truth that the director died before he could fight for his original cut, and the studio made sure you'd never see it. Number 1. Director Michael Reeves was only 24 years old when he made this movie. 24. Most directors his age were working on student films or commercials, but Reeves, he was choreographing torture scenes with real hanging rig and medieval props sourced from private collectors. He had already made 2 low-budget horrors, and this was supposed to be his breakout. The truth is, he worked like a man possessed, demanding take after take in freezing English field until actors were shaking from cold and exhaustion. Crew members said he barely slept. Some nights, he'd just sit alone in the editing room, chain-smoking, watching dailies. What most people don't realize is that obsession would cost him everything, because the next part is darker. Number 2. Vincent Price didn't want to take the role seriously. He showed up thinking this was just another campy Roger Corman gig. Same producer, same low budget, same monster movie vibe. Reeves wanted something different, something cold. Price kept cracking jokes between takes, doing his theatrical voice, playing it big. And Reeves, he snapped. Reports say he confronted Price on set, told him to stop the Halloween act and play Matthew Hopkins like a real predator. The two clashed constantly. Old silences, passive-aggressive blocking changes. But here's the thing. Price eventually delivered one of his most chilling performances. No winks, no camp, just cruelty. And that tension, you can feel it in every frame. Number 3. The torture scenes used real historical methods. Reeves researched 17th century witch trials obsessively, poring over court records and illustrated manuscripts. The pricking needle, modeled after actual tools used by witch hunters to find devil's marks on accused women. The dunking chair, built to spec from period design. One actress, Hilary Dwyer, later said the cold water scenes left her genuinely terrified. She was dunked repeatedly in a freezing pond, while extras shouted and threw mud. No safety divers, no heated trailers, just brutal authenticity. What were they trying to prove? That history was worse than horror, and this is where it gets uncomfortable. Number 4. The British censors hacked the movie to pieces. The original cut ran around 90 minutes and included extended torture sequences the British Board of Film Classification called sadistic and obscene. They forced cuts to the branding scene, the hanging sequences, and a prolonged whipping that showed visible blood. Reports say nearly 4 minutes were trimmed before the film could get an X rating in the UK. 4 minutes. That's multiple scenes. And here's the problem. Most of that footage is gone, vanished. The studio didn't archive it properly, and by the time collectors went looking in the 1980s, the original negatives had degraded or been lost. You've never seen the movie Reeves actually made. That leads to number 5. Number 5. The American version was retitled and recut again. American International Pictures slapped a new name on it, The Conqueror Worm, after an Edgar Allan Poe poem that has nothing to do with the story. Why? Brand recognition. IP had been milking Poe adaptations with Price for years, so they shoved this into the same box. They also added a prologue narration, reading the Poe poem him over unrelated imagery. Reeves was furious. He called it insulting and a studio trick, but he had no control. The contract gave AIP Final Cut for the U.S. market, and that version, bastardized, rebranded, narrated like a spooky campfire story, was what most Americans saw. The real film stayed buried overseas. Now watch this. Number 6. The finale was even more brutal in the original script. In the version you can watch, Ian Ogilvy's character axes Vincent Price's face in a blood-splattered frenzy, while Hilary Dwyer screams herself into madness. Bleak enough, right? Wrong. Early drafts had an extended sequence where Hopkins, still alive, face split open, tries to speak, before finally dying. The makeup effects were completed. The footage was shot. But test audiences in 1968 walked out. Studio executives panicked. They trimmed the death to mere seconds and cut away to Dwyer's scream. What most people don't realize is that the full death scene was deemed unwatchable, even by horror standards. And this is where it gets weird. Number 7. Michael Reeves died less than a year after the film's release, February 11, 1969. He was 25 years old. The official cause was an accidental overdose, barbiturates mixed with alcohol, but friends said he'd been spiraling, depressed over the studio interference, frustrated that his vision had been chopped up, drinking heavily. Some reports say he was planning his next film, a medieval epic, but the funding collapsed. The night he died, he was alone in his London flat. Cold air, empty bottles, no note. And here's the scary part. He never got to fight for a director's cut, never got to restore the banned footage. The movie that made his name also became his tomb, because the next part is worse. Number 8. Vincent Price later called it his best performance and said he regretted how he treated Reeves. In interviews years later, Price admitted he'd been arrogant and dismissive during production. He said Reeves saw something in the material he didn't, a historical horror that felt real, not stagey. Price watched the finished film and realized the kid director had dragged something raw out of him. He tried to reach out after release to apologize, but by then, Reeves was dead. Price carried that guilt for years. He'd go on talk shows and praise Witchfinder General as a turning point, a film that forced him to act instead of perform. But the reconciliation never happened, just silence. And that leads to number 9. Number 9. The locations were actual 17th century sites where witch trials occurred. Reeves shot in Suffolk and Norfolk, England, the real stomping grounds of the historical Matthew Hopkins, the village of Lavenham, the crumbling churches, the stone bridges. These weren't sets. They were the same places where accused witches had been dragged through mud and hanged in the 1640s. Cast and crew reported an oppressive atmosphere during night shoots. Fog rolling in, no streetlights, just torches and cold stone. Hilary Dwyer said she felt watched during one outdoor scene filmed near an old execution site. Superstition? Maybe. But the dread soaked into the film. You can feel it. What were they tapping into? Something that never left? Number 10. The movie was banned or heavily censored in multiple countries. Finland banned it outright until 2002. 2002. West Germany cut it to ribbon. Australia slapped it with an R rating and demanded trim. Even in the UK, where it was shot, it carried a dreaded X certificate and was pulled from some regional cinemas after complaints. Why? The violence wasn't supernatural, it was historical. It was real. Torture devices, mob justice, sexual sadism masked as religious duty. Censors couldn't hide behind "it's just a monster movie." This was humans destroying humans, and that made it dangerous. Here's the problem. The bans made it legendary. Now watch this. Number 11. There's a rumored lost cut that may still exist in a private archive. Some film historians claim a 93-minute version, longer than any official release, was screened privately in 1968 before the censors got involved. It allegedly contained the full torture sequences, extended executions, and a longer final massacre. A French collector supposedly owns a 16mm print, but he's never allowed it to be scanned or restored. Why not? Legal threats from the studio. Fear of prosecution under obscenity laws. Or maybe it's just a legend, a ghost story told by cult film fanatics who want to believe there's a true version. But if it's out there, locked in a vault somewhere, gathering dust, what else is hiding in the dark? Number 12. The film's reputation grew because it nearly destroyed everyone involved. Reeves dead at 25. Price haunted by regret. Footage banned across continents. A studio that tried to bury its own creation. And yet, Witchfinder General became a landmark. Critics called it one of the most important British horror films ever made. A brutal, unflinching look at power, corruption, and cruelty dressed up as righteousness. It influenced directors from Terrence Malick to Ben Wheatley, and every time someone rediscovers it, they realize the same thing. This wasn't horror for fun. This was horror as history, as warning. The chaos that made it wasn't a mistake. It was the point, because art born in conflict never forgets. So that's the truth. Witchfinder General was never supposed to survive. A dead director, a butchered cut, banned footage lost to time. But it clawed its way into legend because sometimes the most dangerous films are the ones that refuse to comfort you. Thanks for watching. Hit like, drop a comment with your favorite fact, and subscribe for more creepy movie secrets. Because there are 100 more stories like this, buried in vaults and unmarked graves, waiting for someone to dig them up.